and it should come blue. Yeah, we good? Yeah, I didn't hold it long enough.
Just 1 second, I had to brush.
That's okay. No. So, the Gita is interested in bringing harmony into this field. So, now I've lost my train of thought.
You're talking about Bhagavad?
Bhagavan. Yeah, so Bhagavan means the Supreme. So, we mentioned as well in yoga is the idea that ultimately, at the ultimate level, everything is one. One field of consciousness. And Bhagavan is a name for the Supreme. A name for that consciousness which is, let's say, in tune with that oneness. So Bhagavad Gītā is a practical teaching that works to help us come to that unity or that togetherness within the reality of nature, which is always changing and which is subject to all these comings and goings. And in the Gita, there's the idea that it's distilling all of the wisdom of the Upanishads, which is a section of the Vedic literature which is concerned with ultimate reality and how to recognize it. But the Upanishads range far and wide. The Gita is celebrated because in this form of the poem or the song, it reconciles, it basically does a yoga of all these Upanishadic teachings. It yogifies them, it brings them all into togetherness and distills them in this relatively concise body of teaching. And when it does that, the Gita is set on the battlefield. We have a particularly helpful situation. Because who is the student in the Gita? Do you remember his name? Arjuna. Now Arjuna, his name means pure. We heard a little bit about his background this morning. I will put the videos on YouTube, or try to. So if you want the story, you can check. So Arjuna, he's actually the son of a god. So he's a very, let's say, noble character. When he finds himself on the battlefield, surrounded by all the people who are dear to him, he doesn't know what to do. Ordinarily, when he goes to fight, he's completely comfortable. He likes fighting. He's been a warrior all his life. There's nothing he enjoys more than firing his arrows. Or maybe there are some things he enjoys more, but it's something that he feels very comfortable in. But this day he goes to the battlefield, and all around he sees the people that normally he's fighting for. The people that motivate him when normally he goes to fight. He doesn't know what to do. He feels completely overwhelmed. But who is he with?
Krishna.
Krishna. Now Krishna, as well as being the Supreme, what did we say Krishna means literally?
Truth.
That was one.
That's what I say.
And
Center of the universe.
Because Krishna literally means a noun, like Martin's top,
Like blue.
black or dark, yeah?
Black matter.
And as a verb, it means to pull towards. So this is how it's like the center of the universe, because Krishna means dark. So it's like the black hole at the center of the universe, the center point in the cave of your heart, you might say. But the lovely thing is that Arjuna, he's really in need. And he's very dear to Krishna. So Krishna is a great teacher, but there's this lovely verse, there's always a verse in Sanskrit, and there's a verse that describes the Gita as the essence of all the Upanishads, like the milk. It says the Upanishads are like cows. Has anybody spent much time with cows? No? So imagine that you're a cow. Okay?
Moo.
Very good. 2,000 years ago in India, or let's 2,500 years ago, when there were fewer human beings on the whole planet than now live in the city of Mumbai. And you're a cow in tropical South India. How is your life?
You're safe.
you're safe, and
Sacred.
you're a sacred animal as well, and you live in a tropical abundant land, and you're a cow, lots of greenery all around. How is life? Great. Yeah. So what do you do? Where do you go? Wherever you like. Do all the cows go to the same place? They all wander here and there. This is what cows do, yeah? They say the Upanishads are a bit like that. So these great research scientists of the Indian tradition, they recognized truths of reality and they wrote them down, or they shared them. But they were also individual human beings, so they shared them according to their personality. Some of them were poets, some of them told stories, some of them wrote in a very spare style. So the Upanishads are all very different. So you need somebody who can gather them all together, and that's Krishna. They call he's like the milker. He knows how to milk a cow. Is it easy to milk a cow? You have to know how, yeah? If not, it can go badly wrong. Those cows' legs can do a lot of damage if they... Now, what else do you need? As well as a person who knows how to milk a cow, if you want to get the milk out of the cow, what else do you need to be present? You need a bucket? Very good. But the cow is only going to give her milk if another entity is there. The baby cow, the calf, yeah? So they said that Arjuna, he's like the calf. Because Krishna loves Arjuna, and Arjuna is hungry. He's in great need. He's in a terrible situation. He's torn, he doesn't know what to do. But Krishna loves him, and Krishna is able to milk all of the Upanishadic wisdom in a cohesive form in the Gita. So the Gita is like the milk, and it's for all of us to enjoy. Anybody who's interested can enjoy it. Arjuna was the calf. He was in need. He tells Krishna he doesn't know what to do. Krishna teaches. But we can all enjoy the milk. And chapter 2, which is said to be the distillation of the whole teaching, is said to be like the cream, or the essence. So we'll be focusing on chapter 2. So we already had a little bit yesterday, and then this morning, the opening of chapter 2, when Arjuna's on the battlefield, and he says to Krishna, I can't fight. I don't see what good can come of fighting against my gurus and my cousins. If I fight against them, I won't want to live. And what did Krishna say?
Get up. No, stand up and fight.
Get up, stand up. You have to, this is... Pull yourself off the ground. This doesn't do you any good. You're a great hero, so rise up. And then Arjuna explains why he feels so torn. But then he also, something important happens. As well as explaining why he feels in such a difficult situation, what else does Arjuna do?
Surrenders.
He surrenders. He acknowledges that he does not know. He says, Krishna, I am your student. Give me your shelter. I don't know what to do. And so we mentioned that in yoga, or at least as I understand it, there are 2 qualifications for yoga. The first is to be born. So we're all qualified. The second is to know that we don't know. To remember, to acknowledge that, I'm not in the complete state of yoga. I don't know myself as well as I might. And to have the attitude of openness. Maybe I can learn something more. So when Arjuna says, Krishna, I don't know what to do, I'm confused. You're my teacher. Please help me. Please tell me the one clear way that I can do what's going to be for the greatest good, for the good of everybody. I'm not interested in victory. I'm not interested in winning the kingdom. I don't even care if I was to become the king of heaven. I'm not interested in that. I just want to do what's for the greatest good. I don't know what to do. Please make it clear for me. I cannot fight. But then another very important thing happens after he says he won't fight. What does he do? Tushni babuvaha. Do you remember from this morning, Martin? He became
Quiet.
He became silent. So he says, I will not fight. And very significantly, basically, he's not going to fight against himself by careening into action when he doesn't feel he's got his conscience clear. Have you ever, this has happened to me sometimes, I don't feel very clear about something, but I just, I'm just going to go and do it. And what was the outcome? It was a disaster, yeah. If I felt torn about, that was a sure sign, maybe you need to pause. So Arjuna, he avoids being his own enemy by just rushing into something where he feels torn, and he has the courage to stop. So here is this great warrior on the battlefield, and he stops. And he acknowledges to Krishna, we could say as his conscience, I don't know what to do. And in stopping, he allows space for a new idea to emerge. So we mentioned that this is one of the things that is very courageous in the world we live in, to actually stop. That is a heroic action, because the world's always encouraging us to go, 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 do, achieve, achieve, achieve. So if we can actually say, no, I'm just going to pause for a moment and really check in with all my powers. I'm going to invite all the powers of my senses, my emotions, my body, my mind, let them all come together quietly and see what feels appropriate. So to do that, not necessarily easy, but often if we give ourselves that little bit of quiet, we can perhaps see things a little bit more clearly. Do you agree? So that's kind of a brief recap of what we've done yesterday and this morning. So Carolina and Martin, is there anything that was in either of the sessions you were at that we haven't mentioned that you think is important?
Maybe about the bad guys. I don't remember the names. You have the
Kauravas. Yeah, so we said in the Bhagavad Gītā that the battlefield situation, the two sides, the Kauravas, who Mariella said, these are like the baddies, but it's more nuanced than that. It's a lovely thing in yoga. So we mentioned that ultimately there's the idea that everything is one, but yoga also recognizes that reality is duality. We have up and down, hot and cold, pleasure and pain, pairs of opposites. But it's not a binary existence. It's more subtle than that. There's always three. And three aspects of reality. There is sattva, rajas and tamas. We mentioned this last night. So when something exists in the realm of nature, when things are born and die, and in between they're subject to change, if it's existing, it has this essential quality called sattva. So say sattva. So sat is from the verb us, the verb to be. So sattva basically means having the quality of being. So it's existence, it's pure existence, it's essence, you might say. But as long as something is existing in nature, it's subject to change. Would you agree? So everything that's born, someday it's going to die, and in between it's going to be changing. So as long as something is existing in nature, rajas or rajo guna, the quality of energy, movement, change, is also present. But there's a third quality, tamas or tamo guna, and this is the idea of inertia. Even though things are subject to change, once something has come into existence in a certain form, it carries some momentum, it carries some inertia. And this is why habits are not always easy to change, and why it requires constant steady effort to free ourselves of limiting habits, even we know clearly at the intellectual level that this habit is no longer serving me. Have you ever experienced that there's something you'd like to change, and here I know I don't want to do that, but then sometimes you find yourself doing it again. Yeah? So to let the whole system kind of catch up with that idea, it takes persistence, because the old pattern has inertia, it has an energy that's established. So if we want to shift it, we've got to generate a different type of inertia. Yeah? So this realm of duality is not just binary, it's always nuanced. But we have these two sets of cousins. Arjuna is one of the Pandavas. They're the sons of gods, but the idea is this: we're also divine beings in the sense that we can experience, we can see, we can hear. These are amazing gifts. We have an intuition that protects us. I was with Adriana, Mariella's daughter, and her almost two. And we went grocery shopping this afternoon. When we get out of the car, Azul had a drink with him. And when his mum picked him up, he gave me the drink. And she turned around and said, "Oh, he gave you the drink." Yeah. He knows just how to get his needs met. Like I have a friend in India, one of my teachers, and he says, there is no such thing as a defenseless creature in existence. Even a little baby, whatever species it is, it knows how to protect itself. It doesn't always work, but generally, and he said this after he had his first son, who was like 2 years, 1 year old, 2 years old. He's the most powerful person in the whole house. And this is a big household, an Indian family with lots of aunts and grandmas. And he says his 1 year old has everybody serving him. He just knows how to do it. So, why did I start talking about? Yeah, we have these intuitive gifts. And so in yoga we want to rehabilitate these gifts so they can all work together to help us inhabit reality in a sustainably harmonious way. But we often, when we start to look at that, we see, sometimes I'm inhabiting reality in a way that isn't always so balanced. There are parts of myself that I've maybe neglected. There are parts of myself I don't really know. And because I don't know them, and they feel neglected, they could be a little bit dangerous, because they could come out in ways that I might not really be so able to deal with so well. So, in the Gita, these two sets of cousins, Arjuna is one of the Pandavas, and they symbolize these gifts of conscience, you might say. They are the tendencies within us that move us in the direction of our soul's deepest longing. But the other set of cousins, and there are 5 of them, the other set of cousins, there are 100 of them. And they're called the Kauravas. And the Kauravas comes from the Sanskrit verb root kra, which is the verb to do. So you could say the Kauravas are basically those forces or tendencies within us that are based on things we've already done, things we've already experienced. You could say they are the force of our cumulative, conditioned ideas and beliefs. Does that make sense? So they have, and there's hundreds of them, because everything that we experience starts to make impressions, yeah? And so if we want to overcome a conditioned pattern, we have to look at that pattern as calmly and with as broad a vision as we can. And this isn't always easy, because the mind, wonderful power tool that it is, it really struggles with things it's not already experienced. So when it knows something, it will happily kind of go there. But if something is brand new, the mind is very reluctant to go there. So even if we recognize that the habits we've been using aren't serving us, if they're familiar, even if they're painful for us, we could say from a certain perspective they are comfortable because they're familiar. So the mind can kind of cope with them even if they're painful. Whereas to go into some new way of being that is completely new, the mind struggles with that. Does that make sense? So we could say the battle is between these tendencies that courageously invite us to move in the direction of wholeness, even if it's something we haven't really fully tasted or savoured in our own experience yet. We've only glimpsed it. And those tendencies of the mind that would confine us to what has already been experienced, what is already familiar. Yeah? Okay. So shall we continue? Yeah? Would you like to sing a song?
Sure.
Yeah? So Krishna's about to start teaching. Yeah? So we'll sing a song to Krishna. Okay? I'm going to sing a song using the name Govinda. So say Govinda.
Govinda.
Jaya Jaya.
Jaya Jaya.
Gopala.
Gopala.
Jaya Jaya.
Jaya Jaya.
Radha.
Radha.
Ramana.
Ramana.
Hari.
Hari.
Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Govinda Jaya Jaya.
So Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Gopala Jaya Jaya.
Gopala Jaya Jaya.
Radha Ramana Hari.
Radha Ramana Hari.
Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Govinda Jai Jai Gopala Jai Jai Govinda Jai Jai Gopala Jai Jai. 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 Radharamana Hari Govinda 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 Jai Jai. Govinda Jai Jai Gopala 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 Jai Jai. So Govinda Jaya Jaya and Gopala Jaya Jaya, these are two names of Krishna. And Go, does anybody know what Go means in Sanskrit? Go actually means cow. So Krishna, when he was young, he grew up in a cow herding community. We mentioned already cows, they can roam all over the place. So Govinda means the one that can lead all the cows, that can bring them all together. Gopala is the one that can protect all the cows. So as we have this tendency, we can sometimes get split and fragmented. We can kind of wander off in lots of different directions at once. And so when we sing to Govinda, Gopala, we're inviting that capacity we have to bring ourselves back into cohesion, into togetherness. And Radha, you mentioned Krishna is dark or black, yeah? And Radha, she's like golden white, like brilliant white, like the sunlight. And she is said to live in Krishna's heart. It says that when we bring everything together, then we can access that inner light, that light of our conscience. So this song is also basically singing to the same teaching energy that the Gita is also sharing with us. So, we came to this point. Arjuna's there on the battlefield, completely overwhelmed, doesn't know what to do, he's collapsed. He said, I won't fight. He becomes quiet, and then smilingly, in between these two sets of opponents on the battlefield, Krishna starts to speak. And so one of the beautiful things that this suggests, I think, is that when we find ourselves in a place of conflict, if we can summon the courage to pause, to stop, look and listen, in the midst of conflict, new ideas can emerge. And it doesn't just have to be back and forth. So one of the things that I feel sometimes tyrannizes us in our thinking and in the world today generally is this kind of binary black and white thinking. Well, that's no good, so I'll go over there. That's no good, I'll go over there. And we kind of flip. Yeah? So we mentioned life is cyclical. Yeah? Now, I've mentioned in the previous sessions I quite like Bob Marley. And one of his songs is called Revolution. It takes a revolution to make a solution. But I actually feel that if we want to make a solution, we have to come out of our revolutionary inheritance. Because the revolutionary turns things around. But what usually happens historically? Something has become corrupt, it's degenerated, we don't like it, we throw it out. What happens?
Replace it with the same.
The same thing comes in, it just got different names. And so we find the same pattern repeats. So yoga, I feel, invites us to have the courage to step out of this flipping between binary opposites, to step beyond our revolutionary patterns into the way of the evolutionary, who recognizes if we want to grow, it doesn't really make sense to reject or throw away everything we've done up to now. Because everything we've done up to now has brought us here. So it's not all bad. And so the courageous spiritual warrior has the presence to accept that the system might not be perfect, but lots of things are actually pretty good. So don't just throw everything out. Let's see how we can build within the existing structure, so we don't need to waste a lot of energy by destroying things. And this is what I sometimes think of. The Bhagavad Gītā, the word Gita is a feminine word. So sometimes people talk about the Gita as a kind of feminine entity. Like the Gita herself is like a goddess. And one of the teachings that I think yoga emphasizes is that we need to learn what the mother knows how to do. We need to learn when we're in a tight spot, when we feel torn, and we don't know what to do, we need to learn how to womb it. Do you know what I mean when I say womb it?
Mm-hmm.
To build something new, to invite something new to emerge, something miraculous that we've never known before, but from within the existing structure. We don't have to destroy everything that's already here in order to create something new. By working with what already is, we can shape it to something much greater than we might ever dare dream, if we have the courage to actually face fully what we are dealing with already. Does that make sense? So coming out of this binary thinking into a more, let's say, inclusive or holistic view of reality that accepts nuance and works with it. So in between these two sets of armies, Krishna is offering, we might say, a more holistic way. And then he starts to teach Arjuna. And the first thing he says to Arjuna, as he really starts to get into his teaching, this is the 11th verse, he says, Ashochanan vashochastavam pragyavadanscha bhashasi gatasun agatasunscha nanashochante pandita. So he uses this word at the end, pandita. Have you heard the word pundit?
It's like an expert.
Yeah, like a pundit. We use it in British English. We use it to describe like in Costa Rica, people like football. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do they show the football on the television quite a lot?
Mm-hmm. Soccer.
Soccer, yeah. Now, how long is a football game?
90 minutes.
90 minutes. How long is the football program on the TV? Like hours, because the pundits, they don't just watch the game, they'll talk about it, yeah? And these are the pundits, the people that know a lot. But it's actually a Sanskrit word and it means a wise person. So we use it casually in this way now, but its original meaning is somebody who really got a deep understanding of something. So Krishna says to Arjuna, Arjuna, you're making out like you're speaking wise words, talking about how you can't fight against these tendencies that are your gurus or your close relations. But you're not really wise. Because the wise, they don't get upset for gatasun, for those who have gone, or agatasun, or those who have not yet gone. This often gets translated to the wise, they don't mourn for the living or the dead. But the Sanskrit word that he uses is gata, which means gone. Those who have gone, or those who have yet to go. So what is he saying here, basically? Wise people don't get upset about the changes of life. Everything is going. So he could say the living and the dead in hundreds of different ways in Sanskrit, but he says those who have gone, and those who are going, those who have yet to go. So he's saying basically, Arjuna, when you're a human being, everything's going. Everything's always moving. This is inevitable. So yoga is very practical. If something's inevitable, Arjuna, is it sensible to get upset about it? If we get, oh no, everything's changing. If we get overwhelmed or dejected or angry, what happens to our capacity to act skillfully?
Diminish.
It diminishes, yeah? So the basic teaching here, and notice how Krishna teaches. So he says, Arjuna, it sounds wise what you're saying, but it's not really. Because wise people don't get upset about those who have gone or those who have yet to go, because they know that everybody's going. So do you see how Krishna is not like saying, Arjuna, you idiot, pull yourself together, everybody's going to die, don't be upset. Like he invites Arjuna to come to that recognition himself by the way he phrases it, yeah? He says, Arjuna, you sound quite wise, but I don't think you really are, you know? The wise people, they don't get upset about those who have gone or those who have yet to go. So he's inviting Arjuna to kind of come to his own recognition. So it's a very clear teaching, but it also invites the listener or the student to kind of compute it in our own way. And I would say that the essence of that verse is really, Arjuna, when you're a human being, change is inevitable. Now, human beings, are we always happy about change? Often we resist it. Sometimes we're very happy that things are going to change. But sometimes when things are a certain way, we cling to them staying that way. But Krishna says that's futile.
Could that be, the meaning of that, could that be that if Arjuna will not fight, somebody else will fight for him?
Later in the Gita, Krishna will say that all of these things that are going to change are going to change anyway.
Anyway, okay.
So he also tells Arjuna, you have to be the sovereign of your actions. Your actions and your experience is your responsibility. So he says in this very beautiful verse that we'll come to probably next week, he says, you have authority or jurisdiction, if you like, over what you do. Your actions are up to you. You have no control over the outcomes of the actions. Sometimes you'll put great effort in, but you don't know how the results will be. Is this true?
Mm-hmm.
But Krishna also says, but don't think that not acting is an option. Because if you don't act, then that itself is an action, that's a choice. So he's on the battlefield and the forces of tyranny are already in the ascendancy. So Arjuna, if you don't act now, this is not a neutral decision. It's like you are becoming complicit with the tyrannizing force. If you stand up against the tyrannizing force, it might not go well. But everything's going to be changing anyway. Your challenge, Arjuna, is to act your part as authentically as you can, as wholeheartedly as you can, because that way you will give yourself the best chance to recognize who you really are, recognize what you're really made of. Don't rob yourself of the opportunity to find out who you really are by complaining about how the situation is not ideal. Oh, I cannot do this. No, this is what you've got to do. So Clarissa Pinkola Estes, do you know this writer, this teacher, Clarissa Pinkola Estes? She wrote a wonderful book that Mariella has a copy of over there called Women Who Run with the Wolves. But she says, do not complain, do not criticize, do not condemn. Which I think is really good advice. There's just one thing about it that makes it fall short ever so slightly of the type of teaching that we find in a text like the Gita or the Yoga Sutra. And do you know what that is? Okay. Think of anything you like, okay? Think of anything you like, but don't think of a red Ferrari.
So it's like think of
Yeah. So if I say don't think of red Ferrari, what happens? You see a red Ferrari, yeah? So the great yogic masters recognized that the brain doesn't really compute negative instructions very well. And so in the Yoga Sutra, for example, there are no negative instructions. Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutra, he does not deal in don't. It's all a positive invitation or an injunction. And Krishna, sometimes he says no, but he's always a little bit more subtle. Yeah? So I like the teaching, do not criticize, do not condemn, do not complain. But a great yogic master would probably recast it in a positive way. But basically Krishna is saying that here. Take care with your energy. If we start lamenting the fact that, oh, life is so hard and my situation is so terrible, what happens to our capacity and our resources to change that situation? It diminishes, yeah. It lessens. This is why I don't feel like, conspiracy theorists. Yeah. Some of what they say I find myself feeling sympathetic about. But somebody who spends 80% of their time talking about what is wrong, I don't think that's very skillful. In yoga, they don't do this. Something's wrong. Okay, well, what can you do practically to make things different? That's where we want to focus our energy. So we focus on the problem. We're taking energy away from the possible solution. So Krishna is saying, yes, Arjuna, you've already told me your plight, why you feel torn. I get it. Enough. Now what are we going to do about it? Stop complaining. Stop lamenting. No point getting upset. This is inevitable. And then Krishna says why he should not get upset. And a very interesting thing happens now in the Gita. And this is typical of yoga. Right now, Krishna's going to go into the very top teachings first. He's going to talk about Arjuna's ultimate nature. Here's Arjuna on the battlefield feeling overwhelmed, and Krishna's going to say in the 12th verse, Arjuna, there has never been a time that you or I or any of these rulers of men has ever not existed. Nor will there ever be a time when we won't exist. So he basically says, Arjuna, your soul or your essence is immortal. And Krishna is going to emphasize this in great detail now for the next several verses. He says, why should you not get upset? Because your essence, nothing can touch it. And it's interesting, he says, there's never been a time that you or I or all these rulers of men, because there's lots of like kings and leaders, generals on the battlefield. I find it interesting that he mentions specifically Janadipaha, these leaders of men. Because what does that suggest? He could just say there's never been a time that you or I or anybody else here has ever not existed. But he says that you or I or these leaders of men, there's never been a time that any of us have not existed or that we won't exist. In the last verse, we had this idea of everything's always changing. So I like the way that this suggests you could be a great ruler, yes? You could be a great king. You could be a common soldier. But your essence always exists. The form you have now, that's subject to change. But the essence is something that whether you're a ruler of people or you're just a common soldier, it's there. It's deathless. So, what's the basic teaching?
We're all one.
We're all one. Yeah? And then he goes on and he says, the embodied soul is part of something much greater. And the embodied soul, it moves through different stages. I'll just recite this first because you might be able to guess what some of the Sanskrit words are quite similar to English words. It says, Dehinosmin yatha dehi kaumaran yauvanan jara tatha dehantara prapti dhiras tatra muhyati. So he says, kaumara, yauvana, and jara. What do you call an old person? Does anybody here work in medicine? How do you call the medicine for the old people? Geriatric, yeah? Mm-hmm. What do you call young people? Youth, yeah? Yauvana, youth. Jara, old people. Kaumara means like childhood, infancy. So Krishna says, when the soul takes on a body, when it's existing in a bodily form, it moves through childhood, youth, and old age. Is this true? Yeah? But he says, the wise person does not get fazed by that. These stages, these movements are normal. Once you've moved through those stages, there'll come a point you've got to leave that body and then move to another one. That's just the way it is. Is this true? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, we've all seen it. It's like that's life. So no point getting upset about it. But Krishna says, underneath, there's a deathless part of you. So, basic teaching. Everything's all right. Yeah. Your essence, nobody can touch it. But imagine you're there on the battlefield. Is this going to be much comfort to you? Perhaps not. So Krishna then in the 14th and 15th verses.
Well, it's a general feeling that death is imminent. Like it gives you a lot of strength.
Yeah.
It's like I have nothing to lose, you know?
Yeah.
But you could also, on the contrary, you could just sort of check out and say, oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So Krishna is going to say now in the 14th verse why it matters. So he's saying ultimately everything is one, and your essence is there through all the different changes. The soul, when it takes on a body, it moves through different stages. That's normal. It's always changing. But the essence remains. And because the essence remains, there's the idea that actually this life, every moment counts. This life is a wonderful opportunity. They say in the yoga tradition, the gods in the heavens envy human beings. Because when you're born as a human, it's such a great opportunity to realize this essential nature, because we have this self-reflexive awareness. And so the 14th verse of the second chapter, this is one of my very favorite verses in the Gita. So Krishna, he's already said to Arjuna, don't get upset about the inevitable. Your essence is deathless. You're part of this one field of consciousness. When you take embodiment, the body is subject to change, but the soul will find a new body. And then he says, when you're embodied, how does it go? Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agama payino nityas tans titikshasva bharata. The next verse. Yam hina viyata yantyete purusham purushashaba samadukha sukham dhiram somritatvaya kalpate. So in the 14th verse he says, he calls Arjuna by two names, and the first name is Kaunteya. His mother was called Kunti, so Kaunteya means son of Kunti. So when he calls Arjuna by this name, it's significant. It's basically flagging up, you who are the son of your mother, you who are the child of a woman, you who have come out of a womb. In other words, human being. So when he calls Arjuna Kaunteya, it's saying, you who have come out of a womb, he's speaking to all of us. When you have come out of a womb, when you are the child of a mother, then when you're a human being, it's altogether completely natural and normal that the contact of your sense powers with the objects of existence, this gives rise to Shita and Ushna, to Sukha and Dukkha. Shita, what is Shita? Ushna, hot. Sukha, agreeable, yeah? And Dukkha, disagreeable. It gives rise to these pairs of opposites. Is this true? We experience these pairs of opposites, yeah? But what do we know about these pairs of opposites?
Impermanent.
They're impermanent, yeah? Agama, they come. Apayina, and they go. Anitya, they are not permanent. Tan, these things, titikshasva, Bharata. So it calls them another name now, Bharata. You who are a child of this land, you who are a child of this earth, be steady amidst all of this change. And this is kind of like the essential foundational instruction in yoga. Be steady. Cultivate the center, cultivate that point of balance as best as you can. And Krishna goes on to say, the person, the human being, that great person, that heroic person, that one who is an example to others, who finds the steadiness to not be perturbed by all the comings and goings, that person, such a steady one, accesses his or her innate capacity to recognize the divine essence, that deathless essence. And so the idea is, change is inevitable. The pairs of opposites will come and go. But if you can stay steady amidst them, then you can recognize here and now, in the thick of life, in the middle of the whirling wonder of it all, you can recognize that immortal essence. And so, that is something you might say that's worth fighting for. That's something that's worth committing to in this life. Does that make sense?
Committing to be steady,
to pay attention, to actually make the most of the amazing gift of being incarnate, of being alive. Because like we mentioned, you could just say, well, because some people say this as well, okay, if I'm really part of this one consciousness, well, who cares? It doesn't matter what I do. No. We're part of it, but in order to recognize it, to realize it, we have to train ourselves. We have to invite ourselves into that recognition. Because the world will condition us in ways that could keep us from it. It's of course our innate birthright, our innate capacity to be able to recognize that. But sometimes people say, oh yeah, I am just, well really we're already God. We're already one. Have you heard of the Sufi poet Hafiz? So he's a mystic Sufi poet. And he says, Swamis, Gurus, holy men, masters, to know if you've found one, take him to the edge of the cliff and hang him over the edge by his feet. And if he doesn't soil himself, maybe he's a real one. Now if you take me to the cliff and hang me over the edge, I will not be happy, I'll be scared, yeah? Whereas if you're living in oneness, if you've really realized the state that there is no other, great. But if you haven't realized that state, then we practice yoga. Then we're practical about it. Because if that's not our genuine day-to-day experience, then saying, oh yeah, well I'm actually God, is just lying to ourselves. Because we don't have that experience. If we experience day-to-day, well actually I have limitations. Some days I wake up feeling like this, some days I wake up feeling like that. When things go a certain way, I do feel more pleasure or more pain. When we acknowledge that, when we stop, look and listen, then we can start to shift it. We can start to become more robust, more able to be steady in the face of life's inevitable change. Whereas if we tell ourselves, oh yeah, I'm a great yogin, if we don't cultivate steadiness, when difficult things come along, what might happen? We might be shocked to realize that we're not a yogin. Yeah? In Costa Rica, do people use the word yogi casually? Yeah, in England, people are like, oh, the people who go to yoga classes, they call them yogis. When I go to India, for example, one time I was in a tuk-tuk, like a rickshaw, in Mysore, this place where lots of yoga students go. And it was a Friday night, and I was on my way home. I can't remember where I'd been, but the rickshaw driver says, oh, you want to go to the disco? The yogis like going to discos on Fridays. And I'm like, no, I'm just going home. But they just use the word yogi to describe somebody who does yoga classes, yeah? Yogi means one who's established in yoga. And when you're established in yoga, you're steady. But until we're established in that steadiness, we have to cultivate it. Because when things come along that challenge the status quo, if that's not our genuine state, we'll soon find out. So in yoga there is, well, let's be honest about where we really are, and then work skillfully from there. Does that make sense? Yeah? So Krishna continues, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. Ubayorapi drishtontas tat... what's the last part of the verse? Tvaniyos tattva darshibihi. So he says, when something is existing, we have in this verse two verbs, the verb us and the verb bu, and these are two words that mean to be. So Krishna says, na asata vidyate bhavaha. When something has become, it cannot not be. And nabhavo vidyate sataha. And when something has not become, it cannot be. Both of these truths have been recognized by the wise. What do you make of this verse? When something is not, it cannot become. When something has become, it cannot not be. On the surface, it can seem like a logician's verse. And some people, because in the Indian tradition, you have this tradition of logic. So from a certain level, what Krishna is doing here is he's making it clear that this essential aspect of the soul cannot be negated by certain logicians' arguments or tricks. When something exists, it cannot not be. When something is not, it cannot become. So what he's basically saying is, the soul is eternal. That which exists, exists. You cannot take away from that. So there's a law of physics that matter can neither be created or destroyed. Is that right, how they say it in physics?
Only transformed.
Yeah. So this same idea. But one thing I like about this is that there's also the idea that everything that exists is the means to practice yoga. Because everything that exists already is. So because everything that exists is real, so sometimes people say, have you heard the idea that the world is an illusion? So in some schools of philosophy, they say this, well, the world is an illusion. I don't know what you think about that. I don't find it particularly helpful. Because my problems don't feel like illusions. They feel very real. And so yoga is the very beautiful and practical system. It recognizes that the ultimate level, these things that come and go, they might not be as real as the deathless essence. But the experience of the world is real because it's part of this consciousness. So in the yoga system, there's the idea that everything that we experience is a manifestation of that infinite creative potential of consciousness. And so here, this verse is reminding us, everything that we're experiencing is an opportunity to practice. So if we're experiencing something challenging, we don't need to reject it. It's an opportunity to learn. Yeah? Does that make sense? And so he continues, Avinashita tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinashma vyasyasya nakashit kartamarhasi. So now Krishna goes into quite some length talking about how the soul cannot be destroyed. So this is basically avinashi. It cannot be destroyed, it cannot be tainted. You are part of this limitless consciousness. Nobody is capable of destroying it. Okay? And now for several verses, Krishna is going to talk about the immortal soul. So he says, Antavanta ime deha, your body has a beginning and an end. Nitya syokta shrirna, but the animating soul within your body is part of something greater. Anashino aprameyasya, and the thing it's part of is indestructible. Therefore, tasmad yudhyasva bharata. So, Arjuna, get up, stand up, engage, fight. Now, when he uses the word yudhyasva, it gets translated as fight, but what I think he really means is make the effort. Now, it's easy when you're living as a human being to get overwhelmed by the suffering of life. So what I think Krishna is saying here is, yes, when you're a human being, your body is limited, it has an end. And because of the limitations that are part and parcel of being a human being, it can be easy to find life overwhelming. It can be easy to get downcast or disheartened. But he says, remember that the thing that is enabling you to experience anything at all, that is part of this deathless oneness. Therefore, engage. So get up and stand up and strive to recognize your essence, because when you're a human being, this is a great opportunity to recognize that. And then he says, one who thinks that your soul kills or is killed is mistaken. the essential part of you doesn't die. And he says, Najayate mriyate va kadachit. There is never a time where your soul is born or dies, nor is there ever a time when it will not be. It is unborn, it is eternal, it is everlasting, it is ancient, and it is not killed in the case that the body is killed. So at great length, Krishna starts talking about the nature of the soul. Now, is there anything unusual here? How do you feel about this? Now we've already had pretty much 10 verses. Krishna's been saying your essence is immortal. He seems to be going on a bit, yeah? And so what he's doing here is really starting to emphasize how your essence is different from everything else that you might know in the world of matter that comes and goes. Veda vinashinam nityam yaena jamaviyam katam sapurushat partha kamgati dihantikam. Arjuna is overwhelmed because he's identified with his bodily form. And Krishna says to him, when you know, when you really recognize your essence, then you realize that your deeper self is not that which is being affected by all these comings and goings. So the changes of life, they're affecting your bodily form. But that essential part of you is subtler than all of that. And that's the part of you that is actually enabling you to have all the experiences that you have. That's the dearest part of you. So you don't need to worry about losing this more peripheral or temporary part. He says, Vasansi jarnani yata vihaya navani grinhati naroparani tata shrirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi. So now he says, the soul, just like for example when you are a human being, do you have any favorite clothes? Yeah?
I've worn these every day for a year.
So, Martin's got a favourite pair of trousers, yeah?
Diesel. Italian.
Well made, durable, robust.
Beautiful.
But, if we were to meet Martin in 10 years' time, and he'd been wearing them every day, would they still be in such robust shape?
No.
No. The most precious piece of clothing, before very long you're using it to scrub the floor, yeah? So Krishna says, just as a human being discards clothes when they get worn out and takes new ones, so the soul discards bodies when they get worn out and takes new ones. So for example, here we are in Costa Rica. It's quite warm. Would you agree? I know some of you it's like a cold day, but with the blankets. Yeah.
Normally it's warm.
Yeah. So if we were to go, like, it's a little, like I see some of you have got extra layers on. It's a cool evening, but if we were to take a quick trip to England in November, some days it can be freezing. Yeah. So we would want some different types of clothing. Yeah. We would want to have maybe a thick coat or a couple of extra layers. But if we were then we could get on our magic carpet yoga mat and fly back instantly to Costa Rica, what would we do with the thick, heavy overcoat? Take it off, for goodness sake, yeah. Because it's no longer serving us. So Krishna is suggesting here that this body is an amazing vehicle. But the body is for the purpose of the soul recognizing itself and getting to where it wants to get, which is that place of recognition, that place of wholeness. Does anybody here love their car?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Have you ever met anybody who really just loves their car?
Oh, I don't really.
No.
But yeah.
So the other day I was staying at my father's house, and in England, the end of the autumn, it's a good time to clean out the garden. So I was cutting a lot of trees back and stuff like that. And then there's a place called, we call it a tip in England, where you can take excess rubbish. I filled my dad's car with branches and leaves, in boxes. And I got to the tip, and a guy says to me, "Oh, you treat your car like mine." Well, I said, "It's not my car, it's my dad's." But yeah, that's what it's for. The car's to take things places. It's not the car. The car is a vehicle. And Krishna says the same with this body. This is an amazing power vehicle, and we should treat it with great respect. But it's for the purpose of recognizing the soul. So Krishna will go on to emphasize that you need to respect your bodily vehicle. There are some spiritual traditions where they talk about, and even in yogic literature you can sometimes come across passages where they say that the body is nothing more than a smelly congregation of dust and liquid. But you can also come across passages where they say this body is sacred. So if you pay attention to it, it is animated by that soul. We've mentioned already that the mind can be a little bit tricky. It can be strategic. It can be duplicitous. But the body doesn't really lie. Is this true? Yeah. The mind has been known to lie. Would you agree? But the body doesn't. Do you have the expression in Costa Rica that there is an angel on your shoulder? Or you have an angel on your shoulder?
Not the expression, but I think we've all seen it like in movies.
The idea, yeah. So, what about the angel in your shoulder? That tells you if the way you're moving your shoulder is actually a healthy way to move it. What about the angel in all of your joints? What about the angel in your belly that tells you need to get some food, or you don't need to eat now? So the body's got all these amazing gifts because it's animated by the soul. So the body is changing. So Krishna is saying here, Arjuna, there's no point getting attached to your white shirt or your diesel jeans or your beautiful blanket. Sooner or later it will be a rag to to clean the floor with. Enjoy it while it's there, but don't mistake it for something it's not. So yes, treasure the body, respect it, honor it, but don't confuse yourself for the body. Because the body's always changing. Is this true? And you are something deeper than that. So don't let yourself get overly identified with just the body. Does that make sense? But at the same time, don't despise or disrespect the body. Yes?
I'm thinking about something. I don't know. Arjuna will fight with their loved ones, right? Family and friends and everything.
Yeah.
Will he be fearful or will be afraid of being alone? I know it's the body, right?
Yeah.
But that's something we always think about.
Yeah.
I mean, what about fighting against everybody around me?
Yeah. So so when we have to, let's say, fight against our habits are like our companions. Yeah. So if, for example, we know we kind of know that in certain situations I react in certain ways.
Get a cup of tea.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's a comfort, yeah? It's just like, oh yeah, the familiarity, it's like a companion. So definitely, it's like, if we have to fight against the dear ones, it's like we are throwing away things that give us comfort, things that we identify with, things that protect us from the mystery and the unknown.
But they have them as well, right? So, to fight against them and to be alone is to protect ourselves.
From the grip of those habits. Yeah.
But other people still have those habits, so even if we fix our own habits, then to still be surrounded by people that have negative behaviour, do we just stay away from those people, or
Yeah, what to do? So what to do?
come to Costa Rica?
Well, Krishna will say in the 3rd chapter, he goes into the yoga of action in great depth, and he says a couple of interesting things directly about that. And one is, he says, don't let the bad example around you steal away your center. And at the same time, he says, if you see people doing terrible things, or if you see, don't think it's your job to try to change them. It's like, don't waste your energy by trying to, in the Bible's that don't cast pearls before swine. Do you know that expression? But what he says is, instead, let your actions be like an inspiration. So don't worry about trying to change anybody else. Take responsibility for how you conduct yourself.
That's so beautiful.
And it's practical as well, yeah? It's like, because if, for example, with family members it can be very strong, because, like, I can tell an example, like, my mother's, she died in 2013, but there was this interesting, in her last years, there was, like, we were, the family, we were all together, and we knew that there wasn't that much time left. And we were having this conversation, we had a meal together one lunchtime, and it emerged that my sister and my mother were worried about something I might do. And then my dad said, he hasn't done that since he was 7. But obviously between the age of 5 and 7, my behaviour was so horrible. It made such a deep impression on my sister and mother that they always worried that if I, in that particular situation, I can't remember what it was, because for me it was like, what are you talking about? And my dad said, he hasn't done that for like 30 years, like. But sometimes people who knew us at a certain time expect us to be somebody who no longer perhaps exists. But maybe they do still exist. And so when those people expect us to be a certain way and we are not, it's a very powerful mirror to find out, have we really changed? Or is that old habit still alive somehow? So that if we can go to be with people who knew the old version of ourselves, and we can sit or stand or move comfortably, how we feel, yeah, this is who I am now, without falling back into that old pattern, what does that show to us? And then the mind knows completely, okay, that old habit is really gone. So it's a very powerful lens. So sometimes the people around, there's the idea, like, there's a beautiful teaching in the yoga tradition, it says, what pair of eyes is God looking at me through today? What pair of eyes is the Guru looking at me through today? And the answer, every pair of eyes that look upon me, even if they're of an insect. There's God, or the Guru, is all around. Every experience can teach us or can help us understand a little bit more about ourselves if we're paying attention. And so for sure, sometimes external circumstances can make it hard to practice. But Krishna will always comes back to, well, what can you influence? Put your energy there. And rather than try to persuade somebody by words, be the example that is irresistible, is the idea. Be that great person that goes, oh yeah, that looks like a way to do it, is the idea. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Yeah. So now Krishna continues with this definition of the soul, and there's a very famous verse, verse 23. He says, this, talking about the soul, this cannot be cut by weapons. This cannot be burned by fire. This cannot be dried. This cannot be wet by waters, and it cannot be dried by the wind. So what does this mean? If this soul or your essence cannot be cut by weapons,
Not be destroyed.
It's not tangible.
in other words, it's not like anything else. So for example, I was somewhere the other day and somebody noticed this rather large bottle. Yeah, they were offering me to buy a plastic bottle. Yeah? I said, no, I have one with me, just fill it up. Oh, he said, Swiss made. Very good. I said, yeah, it's going to last me a long time. And, however, years ago, I actually had a plastic, when I used to teach in university, and I just had a plastic bottle I would fill up again and again and again, and it got, do you know, if you keep a plastic bottle for a long time, eventually it starts to deform. And so my students bought me a better bottle. And one of my friends said, James, you're always traveling. Don't they sell those Swiss bottles in the airports? You should get one. So I did it. I invested in one. But even though this is Swiss made, if we had an axe and you struck it with an axe, even though it's Swiss made and relatively robust, you can see I dropped it on the floor, it already got deformed. Yeah? Is it going to withstand the axe? If we throw it in the fire, and if it does have this finish that lets the water run off it, but it can still get wet and it can still get dry. Yeah? Lovely floor here, yes? Beautiful floor. Don't need even mat to practice on here, yeah? But this beautiful floor, the wood has been cut. The wood can be burned, the wood can be wet, the wood can be dry. So it's basically saying your soul is different from everything in the manifest universe. It's subtler than all of that. And then he says the same thing in the next verse. He says it's basically uncleavable, it cannot be, it's unsplittable, it's unburnable, it's unwettable, it's undryable, it's eternal, it's ever present, it's steady, it's constant, it's ancient, and it's everlasting. Okay. So it's pretty clear about it, yeah? So right at the beginning he says your essence is this inviolable thing. Why do you think Krishna goes into such detail about this right at the beginning? Why is he not telling Arjuna more right away about what to do and how to behave?
No, I think he is.
Yeah, in a certain way he is, yeah? So let that be your orientation. But also, one thing that's happening here is Krishna is setting things up to guard against the student's possible tendency to fall into the valley of false enlightenment. Have you heard of the valley of false enlightenment? So the valley of false enlightenment is the person feels, oh yes, I've done it. I'm there. So Krishna is emphasizing again and again beyond doubt, when you're there, you become identified with this thing that cannot be wet or cannot be dry. So if you're a person like me, who if you go into the cold sea, and I was swimming at Nosara this weekend, it's so lovely, you can stay in the water all day, you don't get cold. Did you swim in the North Sea when you were a boy ever, Martin?
No, I have a friend who swam the English Channel.
Yeah.
And he said it was very, had a lot of training for it, yeah.
Yeah, you have to prepare for that, yeah?
Yeah.
So, I do feel cold, I do feel hot, and I'm identified with that. So I'm not quite there. So he's giving us lots of things to check in with. If I want to know if I'm really fully realized, is my realization at this level? And then he says, avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate tasmadevam vidvainam nana shochitamarasi. So he says, basically your soul is beyond perception. It's beyond conception. It cannot be made to decay. Nobody can harm it. So what's the message here? It's become a brand. No fear. Yeah? Your essence cannot be touched, it cannot be destroyed, it cannot be harmed. So have no fear, Arjuna. And then he says, but if you think, if you don't believe in this eternal soul, if that doesn't make any sense to you, let's just think about things here and now. If you don't think that the soul is eternal, even then you have no cause to mourn, you have no cause to get upset. Because what do we know? That which is born, what's going to happen? It's going to die, that is certain. And he also says that that which dies is going to get born again, and that's certain. Do you agree with that? If you think of a tree, yeah? Like, I've just come from England, and it's the beautiful, I have some photos on my phone, that's why I look there, but beautiful autumn colours. The tree, many of the trees, they shed their leaves. But what do they do with the leaves? Where do the leaves go?
Into the soil.
They go back into the very soil which has allowed the previous season's growth. And as the leaves decompose, they give nutrition back to the soil to support the next cycle of growth and expansion. So Krishna says, no cause to get upset, even if you don't believe in the soul, because you do know just from observing life that everything is always in this cycle. It's inevitable, so don't get upset about the inevitable. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyaktadanyeva tatraka paridevana. So he says, before you were existing, nobody knows. Where you're going to go after this, nobody knows. But this state is clear, and we know what it's about. It's about change. So don't get upset about it. You know what life's like. You've been around long enough to see. So no need to get overwhelmed by it. This is reality. What do you think about that? It's pretty sound advice, yeah? So Mariella was saying last night, she says she loves the Gita because Krishna is so pragmatic. He's not harsh, he's not soft, he's just kind of straight down the line. So he tells Arjuna, don't be upset. Your essence is inviolable, everlasting. But even if you don't believe in an everlasting soul, no point getting upset. Everything's always changing, so you might as well just get on with life as best you can.
I think he's assertive.
He is assertive, yeah.
And he's like preparing Arjuna to know exactly who he is. I think the first thing is to realize who we really are.
Yeah.
Right? Because we get to identify with action or things, or for example jobs. So after we don't have a job or I don't know, anything that we don't have, we feel like empty.
Yeah.
And we feel we lost something. But we really keep being the same soul, the same being, the same human being. So he's like preparing Arjuna that he, even if he's fighting with the family and the friends and the loved ones, he will be the same soul or the same person that he will always be. Because we tend to feel guilty. With these things, it's like, why did I change? Why did I left that? Why did I? So I think he's like preparing really well. I kind of identify with that.
Yeah.
And it's cool that, in a way, well, I think all true teachers share that in common. Like, they show you the door, but they just show you the door.
Yeah.
So it's cool that he's very like assertive about, okay, this is who you are, this is your essence, but how you need to behave, you will discover by going through that door.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like that way, his behavior will be like truly empowered. We're like infused in that teaching, like, and not so much like don't do this, which is really like superficial.
I feel like it's interesting. Like our essence is pure, and Krishna says like it's it's always going to be there, but we're also always changing, and everything is changing. And something we all have, I think, here in common is trying to change to be like a better person and to create, to be more in harmony with the world, but that's also change. So at the end, it's like be steady with change, but at the same time we're trying to change. It's like a battle I have myself in my mind. Like I want to constantly change, and then it's interesting. He says like be steady to change. So it's like, oh my God. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so when it's into this idea of being steady, and Krishna will emphasize as the Gita goes on, this is one thing he will repeat, he will re-emphasize it. He'll say, for example, when Arjuna says, Krishna, how is the person who is dear to you? And Krishna will say, that person is steady. That person is the same in gain and loss, in joy and sorrow. When Krishna describes a yogin or an established yogin, he will describe the same. That person is steady. And sometimes this can give us the idea that becoming established in yoga and becoming a yogin is really rather boring. Just the same all the time, like an automaton, yeah? But that's not what he's saying. What I understand is when he says you've got to be steady, you've got to be the same. When he says the same, what it means, I think, at least from my understanding of it, is that you bring the same depth of presence to all situations. So when things are going beautifully, when things are really, as you know, beyond your wildest dreams, you're still very present. So where am I in this? You can notice, things are going well. How is my attitude perhaps inviting that? And when things are tough, can you also bring the same depth of presence and awareness? So as the world changes, the constant factor of the yogin is that steady, subtle, deep, vast presence. But because the world is constantly changing, and because it pulls us in different directions, different experiences stimulate different parts of us. In certain situations, maybe let's say certain of our senses or certain of our physical capacities or our intellectual or emotional capacities get a lot of exercise or stimulation, and other parts of ourselves don't have so much outlet in such a situation. And so because we're experiencing so many things like that, we have so many experiences that perhaps they may be influenced to become a bit more fragmented. So in order to become whole system present all the time, that requires a lot of preparation, a lot of training. And so that's one of the things I find interesting, that Krishna spends so much time, relatively speaking, emphasizing this deathless essence or this nature of the soul. Because as you pointed out, Caroline, that's kind of reminding us. It's very easy to lose sight of that because of all these influences that tell us, oh no, you have to do this, or if you don't do that, then you... To remind again and again, no, what's it really all about? And the next verse, the 29th, is the verse that I actually mentioned to Adriana last night. She's just gone. But he's talked about the soul and how it's this thing beyond description. And so I'll recite this 29th verse. He says, Ascharyavat pashati kaschirenam Ascharyavat varati tataiva chanyah Ascharyavat shainamanya shrinoti Shrutvaphinam vedana chaiva kaschite. So 3 times he says this word, Ascharyavat. So Ascharya means like a sense of wonder. It's like you can't quite fathom it. It's mystery, you might say. So he says some people see or recognize that the soul is this great mystery. Some people speak of it in this way. Some people hear it being spoken of in this way. But who really knows what it is? So here Krishna is saying you have to allow for the mystery. Mystery is part of life. Human beings, I don't know if you agree, but it seems we like to try to put everything in a convenient little box. We like to define things. We like to put things into systems. Here Krishna is saying the mystery of life, the essence of life, people can talk about it as being a thing that is really wonderful, is a great mystery. You can hear a bit about it like that, but that isn't really understanding it. Who really knows it? So I think the invitation in this verse is, I've been telling you about the soul, like Arjuna was saying. He's showing Arjuna a door. Your soul is beyond description. So I can tell you about your soul, but that's not going to help you understand what your soul is. You have to explore reality with a sense of wonder, with a sense that allows for the mystery. Now, to allow for the mystery, you have to be courageous, because this demands that you go out of that tendency to want to label everything. Because if you want to, when you label or name something, what do?
You care for it. You care for it.
Perhaps, but you can also label something you don't care for.
You limit.
You limit it, yeah? So in the Indian system, God has many names, yeah? Or the ultimate or supreme reality has many, many names. Now, when I was a child at school, I was told some things that I think are not quite accurate. And one of those things was that Hinduism, the religious interpretation of Indian philosophy, was a polytheistic religion because it believes in many gods. Did any of you get told this? And it's rather misleading, because in the Indian system, the supreme is one, as Krishna's been saying, as we've mentioned, everything is ultimately one. But God has, or the supreme or ultimate reality, whatever you want to call it, has so many names to overtly remind us that the name is not it. Yeah? So in India you can go to a temple that's dedicated to Lord Shiva as an archetypal representation of the Supreme. But in some temples to Shiva, there will also be icons of Vishnu or Mother Divine and Ganesha. And the point being, the symbol is not it. The name is not it. Shiva is just a way of pointing towards that which is beyond name and beyond form. So here, Krishna is invoking that idea. The mystery is beyond words. You can talk about it, but the words can just usher you in the direction of the experience. But to access the experience, you have to maintain that sense of wonder. So when we speak about it with a sense of wonder, when we listen with a sense of wonder, we have an openness that can perhaps invite ourselves into an experience that could reveal more of that mystery. But if we think I'm going to define it and speak about it, we're just kidding ourselves, because who really knows it?
But that's the way we've been raised. I mean, that's the way I've been raised. For example, there's a God, there's a church, there's one religion. I mean, Catholic. So I remember when I saw like different forms or different symbols of God, it was like, I mean, there's change, right? Because I come with the teaching of the one God and one image.
Yeah.
Is the first time that I'm thinking of different.
Yeah, because I find interesting things. So, like for example, in the Islamic tradition, there's the idea that you can't have any image of God because God is beyond all images. So you have no images. But in the Indian system, they do the same thing, but they use all sorts of images to emphasize God is everywhere. Everything is divine. So I mentioned Shiva. Yeah, so Shiva is one of the great archetypal representations of supreme reality in the Indian system. And one of the most basic symbols of Shiva is what they call the linga. Have you heard of the Shiva linga? So linga, it literally means sign or symbol. But the linga it represents the phallus and the yoni. So it represents the male and the female joining together. But the basic linga is just something that sticks up out of the earth. So this could be the linga, for example. Now there's a story in the Indian tradition that illustrates this. Now, generally speaking, and I'm speaking in general terms here, in the Indian system, there's the idea that people who are Shaivites, who recognize Shiva as the supreme reality, they are generally speaking less concerned with surface appearance, and they're more concerned with the internal practice, just generally speaking, like stereotypically, yeah? And people who worship Vishnu as the supreme are generally speaking more concerned with the surface practices and rituals. This is just like the stereotype. Because Shiva is a mountain man, yeah? He's meditating on top of Mount Kailash, naked. He doesn't care about social etiquette, he cares what's in your heart. And in Shaivite practice, you don't change your name, you don't change your clothes, it's what's inside that counts. But Vaishnavas, generally speaking, of course this is just again very general, they pay more attention to doing things in the proper way. Because when Vishnu is embodied, he often embodies, for example, Rama was a king. He's often represented as somebody who knows how to navigate culture in a very dignified way. So Vaishnavites, they place great emphasis on doing things in the pure way, in the appropriate way. So there's a story. One day, a very pious Vaishnavite who worships Lord Vishnu as this representation of the supreme reality, he is on a journey to go and meet a friend. He gets up in the morning, he recites the Vishnu Sahasranama, a hymn of the 1,000 names of the Supreme as Lord Vishnu. And then he makes his way, and he has to travel through a forest, and it's quite a long journey. Sunny day. It's getting hotter and hotter, and he comes to a beautiful stream. And he's thanking Lord Narayana. Narayana is another name for Vishnu, for this beautiful shady spot. But then he is alarmed. He is shocked, because what does he see? He sees a naked man. Now, him being a Vaishnava, he is wearing 2 pieces of pure, uncut, virgin white cloth, wrapped in the appropriate way to help the energy flow in his body, because he's a Vaishnava and he has to do everything properly in the pure way, yes? And then he sees lying by the side of the river a naked man with a long beard and long dreadlocks. And he's lying kind of like this with his feet, and at his feet there is a Shiva linga. Now in the Indian tradition, the head is the purest part of you, and the feet is the most impure. So in Asian culture, to point your feet at something is a sign of disrespect. So this Vaishnavite, he is absolutely appalled, because this naked, first of all he's naked, and secondly he's pointing his feet at the Shiva linga. So the Vaishnavite, he's absolutely incensed, he's outraged. And he's so shocked, he can't make the words. And eventually he manages, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you, you brute?" And the man who's almost was trying to enjoy the sunshine said, "Get out of the way, please, you're blocking it." And he said, "Why have you got your feet pointing there?" "What do you mean, there?" "But the linga, why are you pointing your feet at the Shiva linga? Of all the places to point them, can't you point them anywhere else?" And the naked man is like, well, where would you like me to point them?" "Anywhere but there." "Okay, And so the naked man moves his feet. And do you know what happens? He moves his feet over here. And a linga emerges from the ground. Oh! Try again. He moves his feet over here and a linga emerges from the ground. He keeps moving his feet and lingas keep popping up. Now the Vaishnava, he's very devout. He's attached to external surface practices, but he has a pure heart. So he's not blocked by his attachment to protocols. They've served him and he gets it. And what does he get? What does he say to the naked man? Oh, I think you better put your feet on my head. Because he realizes he's received a great lesson this day. Because the naked man has reminded him that, of course, doing things in certain ways has tremendous value, but only if it trains us to do it from a place of pure intention. And so the man who was there, why was the linga springing up at his feet?
Because they weren't impure.
Because they weren't impure, because his whole being was blessing and saying thank you to the glory of nature all around. And so the Vaishnava took the Shaivite's feet on his head and went on feeling grateful for this great blessing, to be reminded that everything is divine. And so the idea of God having so many different names in the Indian tradition is the idea that God cannot be named. It cannot be represented with any particular form, and at the same time it can be represented by anything, because it's all divine. Everything is the means. So here Krishna says, yes, we can talk about the soul, we can use these, and I've just defined it in 14 verses, and you can't cut it, you can't wet it, you can't dry it, it's inviolable, it's eternal, it's unshakable, it's always there, it's ever present, it's been there since the beginning of time, it's going to be there till the end of time, and so on and so on and so on. But those are just words. You can hear those words, you can repeat those words, but that's not it. Because that is actually beyond words. In order to access that which is beyond words, it's your attitude that counts. So never lose your sense of wonder. When you have that sense of wonder, you can open to the mystery of life, and you can maybe step further into it. But if you try to define it, then you'll probably erect a barrier to actually recognizing it. So never lose your sense of wonder, and keep exploring that mystery. And that's kind of the end of one little section of the Gita. So I've basically emphasized your essence is indestructible, so have no fear. And when you feel overwhelmed by life, remember, life can be overwhelming, that's its nature. Just do your best to be steady. Remember, your problem is smaller than you. It exists within your awareness. So summon as best you can all the powers of your awareness, and when you do that, you'll have more resources to contend with the challenges of life. So, any questions about what we've touched on this evening? Is it clear?
Very.
Yeah? Does it feel practical? Yeah? It's going to get more practical. Like this section, I always find it because it's really going to get into when you're in those difficult situations, how the mind can be tricky and how to overcome it. But it's not by accident that Krishna starts at the top. So he makes it clear that's what you're aiming for, and when you're alive as a human being, you have the chance to recognize that. Therefore, get up, stand up, take this opportunity. It's so precious, a human birth. You never know when this life will end. So every moment, be thankful, be present for the opportunity to recognize this wonder of life. Does anybody have any questions about anything this evening?
No, when I have a problem, I just think about Arjuna. I'm not in a battle. I'm fine. Right?
Okay, so we'll close with a mantra together. We'll start with Om, end with Om Shanti 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 Om. Sahana Vavatu. Together. Sahana Vavatu. Sahana Punaktu. Sahana Punaktu. Sahaviryam. Sahaviryam. Karavavai. Karavavai. Tejasvina. Tejasvina. Aritamastu. Aritamastu. Ma vidvishavai. Ma vidvishavai. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming and sharing this evening. Tomorrow is full moon day, so there will be no morning practice. But we will have kirtan tomorrow night at 7. So yoga singing. And it's Adriana's birthday tomorrow. So. Then Friday will be morning class at 6. Then the philosophy at 10. And again in the evening.
Friday.
I think so. Oh no. No.
Well, I don't know. Friday we usually don't have philosophy. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think we do. We'll check.
Okay.
We'll check.